The orders to build the White House came from President George Washington. Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson announced a contest or competition for architects and builders to enter their designs. Jefferson placed ads in newspapers around the country on March 14, 1792. The designers had until July 15, 1792 to enter their designs. 6 people entered the contest. The winner would choose a prize of $500 or a medal of the same value. James Hoban, a builder who was born in Ireland but was working in Charleston, South Carolina, was declared the winner. Hoban started working on the plans for the White House in 1792. The cornerstone of the White House was laid October 13, 1792. Scottish masons helped build the White House. 10 to 12 Scottish masons came over here to help build the White House. Slaves slept in tents on the side of Lafayette Park across from the White House. Slaves who worked in the quarry were given 1 pint of whiskey a day and a diet of pork for their meal. The first president to live in the White House was John Adams and his wife Abigail Adams. When the Adams moved into the White House, only 6 rooms were ready. Mrs. Adams would hang laundry in what today would be the Red Room. In 1805, President Jefferson started the tradition of the president standing in front of the north front of the White House and greeting anyone of fair character and fair appearance. Every president would greet guests on January 1st and July 4th, except in a time of war this was not done. The tradition lasted into Herbert Hoover. President Thomas Jefferson also started the White House tour. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson both died on July 4th, 1828. James Madison died July 4th, 1831. President Calvin Coolidge was born July 4th, 1872. Andrew Jackson's inauguration night, many people were in the White House to celebrate his great victory. They tore up the White House so bad, President Jackson had to spend the night at a hotel while the White House was being cleaned. The British tried to burn the White House down August 24, 1814. President Madison was out trying to get troops to defend the city. Mrs. Madison was having dinner when the British marched into the city. When the British came into the White House, the food was still warm on the plates. Mrs. Madison barely escaped. If it not had been for a driving rainstorm, the White House would have burned down. The first president to die in office was William Henry Harrison. President Harrison had made the longest inauguration speech, 1 hour, 40 minutes in the cold. He later contracted pneumonia and died 31 days later. The White House was draped in black. President Harrison's funeral was in the East Room of the White House. People attended by invitation only. President Abraham Lincoln was shot by John Wilkes Booth April 14, 1865, in Washington, D.C. The president died the next day. On April 18, 1865, mourners lined outside the White House. Thousands of people came by to view the body of the 16th president in the White House. Many waited more than 6 hours. The East Room overflowed with mourners into the Green Room. 600 invited guests attended the funeral of President Lincoln. Mary Todd Lincoln was so overcome with grief she did not attend the viewing. Mrs. Lincoln stayed at the White House 5 weeks after the death of her husband. Up until the Civil War, the White House was the largest house in America. In September 1901, President Theodore Roosevelt decided to make the name White House the official name for the House of the President of the United States. He also decided rooms in the White House were too small for his large family. Roosevelt had a temporary office structure built for his staff. While the executive building was being built, the president and his staff worked at 729 Jackson Place Northwest. President William Howard Taft had the Oval Office built in 1909 in the temporary executive office building, which was later called the West Wing of the White House. The first Oval Office was in the center of the building. In 1929, the executive building of the White House caught fire during a Christmas party held by President Herbert Hoover, but the fire did not burn down the White House. President Franklin Roosevelt had the Oval Office moved to the southeast corner of the executive building in 1934. The West Wing was enlarged, adding a second story and a larger basement. Therefore, it would be easier for President Franklin Roosevelt to get in and out of the White House. Major renovations were done during the Truman administration from 1948 to 1952. The White House was gutted, leaving only the outer walls. In 1948, the Truman balcony was added. President Barack Obama was the very first African American to be president. First Lady Michelle Obama added a garden to the White House in 2009. Today, the White House has 132 rooms, 35 bathrooms, and 6 floors. 147 windows, 27 fireplaces, 8 staircases, 2 basements, a movie theater, bowling alley, and a library. The official color of the White House is whisper white. The only son of a president ever to be married in the White House was the grandson of John Adams and the son of John Quincy Adams. John Adams married Mary Helen in 1828. 3 presidents have won Grammys for the spoken word: President Carter, President Clinton, and President Obama. It takes 590 gallons of whisper white paint to paint the White House.